Locker Room, with all the sports news you need, live. Good afternoon, it's Friday afternoon, and we are back again on the Locker Room. It seems to be a very quick week as always, but it's never a slow week or a dull week in Scottish football, and that's no different this time, or in Scottish sport indeed. My name is Graham D, as I'm sure you all know by now, and I'm delighted again to be joined by my regular sidekick, Mr. David Smith. David, how are you, mate? How's your week been?
Yeah, very good. Busy enough, but Friday. Delighted it's Friday on the weekend.
Excellent. We obviously have a lot to look forward to, including the small matter of the first bit of silverware this season, the Viaplay Cup Final between Celtic and Rangers on Sunday. We also have a few league games as well. Thankfully, Hearts can't ruin the weekend because we're not playing this weekend. We will hopefully be joined by Paul Mitchell very shortly. We've also got a couple of guests coming on as well to look forward to the game on Sunday. But before we start, I just want to pass on myself, and I'm sure Dave and everyone else at the Locker Room's condolences to the family of Hibernian chairman and majority shareholder Ron Gordon, who sadly lost his battle with cancer on Tuesday. 68-year-old Ron Gordon had sent an open letter to Hibs fans. I think it was around the 3rd of February, basically saying that he did have this battle with cancer, but he would obviously do his best to kind of stick around for as long as he could. But unfortunately, he lost that battle on Tuesday. His son Ian is head of recruitment at Hibs. So deepest condolences to Ron Gordon's family and friends at this very, very sad time. And, you know, Dave, I know myself that cancer is a horrible, horrible disease. And unfortunately, it's taken life of somebody else. And, you know, to Hibs as well, it's such a sad, sad loss.
Yeah, first and foremost, condolences and prayers, thoughts and prayers, condolences and prayers to Ron Gordon's family at this sad time. I mean, cancer is a horrible disease, as you touched upon there, and one of our chairmen within Scottish football. I mean, chairmans are big parts to playing clubs, but also it's a massive loss to the guys at Hibs. I mean, Hibs have been getting a lot of negative press off the park in terms of how they were run, how they were communicating with fan base, all that various things. But on the other hand, Ron Gordon has done a lot of great work at Hibs over the last few years. Made Easter Road, made numerous improvements to Easter Road, arguably one of the better grounds in the Scottish Premiership. The Tynecastle. When you look at the football department, they seem to be in a good place. They've embedded a lot of the youth products in the first team. They've done a lot of fantastic work behind the scenes. So thoughts and prayers to Ron, thoughts and prayers to the family of Ron Gordon at this sad time.
Yeah, I mean, he took over the shareholder in 2019, and we all know that obviously the cancer had been hidden. We didn't know this until a wee while ago that he had this. And I mean, what do you think his legacy will be? Because as you said, Hibs do have a fantastic stadium. He obviously brought in the managers like Sean Maloney. He's brought in Lee Johnson, who right now, since we didn't know he would be, but he seems to be turning things around at Hibs. What do you think Ron Gordon's legacy will be?
Stadium, as I touched upon, probably the most important one for me, and it probably won't be recognised as much, but the amalgamation of Hibernian women, like getting them involved full time at the club, was probably big for Hibs because, let's be honest, prior to that, it was only Celtic, Rangers, and Glasgow City in the women's game that really had a full time method about them. Hibs and Hearts started to achieve that, but Hibs's hard work was predominantly down to Ron Gordon. So that'll be a huge legacy as far as he's concerned. And probably just more fan engagement because during Ron Gordon's tenure, there would have been a lot more fan engagement. So I'd say that as well.
Yeah, 100%. As I say, a very, very sad loss at this time to the Hibernian family and Ron Gordon's family as well. And, you know, it's never easy when somebody passes away, no matter what age, and with this horrible disease. So it just condolences to Ron Gordon's family at this very, very sad time. As I say, we are going to get on to Rangers and Celtic very, very shortly. We do have guests coming on. But I do want to touch upon, because there are actually games tonight, and one of those is in the SWPL, and it is Celtic against Rangers. Celtic are sitting second. Rangers are sitting third. Celtic have scored 78 goals. Rangers have scored 77 goals. 47 points Celtic have got. Rangers have got 46 points. Celtic are only 3 points behind Glasgow City. This, as every Celtic Rangers game is, Dave, this is going to be a massive game for Fran Alonso and for the Rangers managers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually had the privilege of speaking to both managers in the last few weeks for the SFF podcast. So that's been very, very good. And by the way, check it out if you've got time before watching the Celtic Rangers game. After this show, I may add, but check it out when you can. As for this game, I had a good debate with friends about this game tonight. And I think whoever loses this game, or whoever, or I would say whoever loses this game is probably out the title race. Because Glasgow City are so consistent, and then a lot of people within the league are waiting for Celtic to go and slip up, or they're waiting for Rangers to slip up. Rangers have endured a few slip ups already this season, undefeated, I think, but slip up. So I think tonight could be an all or nothing situation. I mean, there's still a long way to go in the title race, but this is what makes Scottish women's football interesting. I think Celtic are back to their best again this season. Last season they won the double. It was a fantastic achievement for Fran Alonso's side to go win the double. But I think they've got a bit of steel all over the park again now. Now, Chloe Craig's a massive doubt for tonight because she got injured in the Boroughmuir game last Sunday. So she's a massive doubt as far as Celtic's concerned. But they've got Kelly Clark, they've got Caitlin Hayes, Jonas in the goal. She's a really, really good goalkeeper. Lisa Robertson, she's back. She's doing very, very well for Celtic this season. Natalie Ross, like a huge signing for Celtic because she missed 14 months through injury. They just couldn't get their eyes on what the actual problem was. And then even in the forward area, they lost a big striker in January. But even then, they're still scoring goals and doing very, very well for themselves. So for Celtic, they're in a very good place just now. And I think they are going under the radar a little bit. As for Rangers, they're quite similar to win tonight, I think, because there's a lot of pressure on them just because of the pride and obviously the tradition that lies with Rangers Football Club. They want to win everything. I think I think they've been a little bit underwhelming this year, Rangers. They've obviously picked up the wins. That's obviously been a good thing, but they've been underwhelming in terms of the way they've got the wins. As far as I'm concerned, it's not as though they're a bad team. You've done a bad team overnight, especially after winning the league last year. But I just think there's a missing piece in the jigsaw Rangers. Glasgow City are back to their best, and like I say, I think it will depend on who wants it more tonight, probably.
This game is actually on BBC Alba tonight. I was just checking that. The programme starts at 6:50, 7 o'clock kickoff. Do you think, obviously, Rangers or Celtic are going to be favourites for this? I mean, you've just said there that you think whoever loses is out the title race. There's not much in it. Glasgow City on 50 points, Celtic on 47, Rangers on 46. Glasgow City play Aberdeen on Sunday. Aberdeen are 10th, not really having the best of seasons. So do you think Celtic are probably favourite for this game?
Before I answer the questions, any teams got games in hand?
I'm not entirely sure. I will check that. Give me a second, I can check that.
Okay, well, I'll speak anyway. Well, Glasgow City have got an easy enough assignment against Aberdeen. That's not being disrespectful to Aberdeen by any stretch of imagination, but when you look at Aberdeen, they're in a bit of transition just now. They still don't have a manager, having effectively let go Emma Hunt and Gary Beef back in November. So I think Glasgow City, as long as they produce a professional performance, they'll go and win that. And Glasgow City have a bit of a distance between them and Rangers right now. As I said to you, Graham, I think Glasgow City have a bit of a difference in comparison to Rangers. They're obviously a different side to last season. I think the time they made the appointment in Glasgow City, I think it was too early for anyone to embed their own ideas. Leanne Ross came in as interim manager as of after Christmas time last year, and not changed too much because there wasn't too much to change at the club, whether it was players or indeed things behind the scenes. So, yeah, there was obviously a lot of positive things surrounding Glasgow City, but they've just kicked on. They've got points when they've got points, but also when it's mattered, they've got like a vital point against the Rangers, or they've got a vital point against Celtic where it's been effective and it's been vitally important to come right now. It'll be vitally important come the business end of the season.
Everybody apart from Partick Thistle and Glasgow Women have played 18. They've both played 19 games. They don't play this weekend, so everyone else has played 18 games so far.
Right, okay.
There is also the small matter. It's a big derby weekend this weekend because also on Sunday it's Hearts against Hibs at Tynecastle, which is looking like being 12,000 at Tynecastle, which is absolutely incredible. I was just having a look back here. That game as well is live on BBC Alba. The programme starts at 1 o'clock. I mean, Eva Olive has done a very good job since she came to Hearts. We're now sitting fourth in the league. We're on 30 points, well behind Rangers and Celtic and Glasgow City. But Eva Olive has done a very good job so far. The last game between the two sides finished 1-1 at Easter Road. A crowd of just over 8,000. So Hearts against Hibs Women now is actually getting quite a name. It's getting a really big turnout as well. And as I say, Eva Olive's done a very good job. She has said her thoughts at the moment are the objective last season against Hibs was to compete. We had a very young and inexperienced team. It was difficult to expect to win. Now the most important thing is 3 points. We know that we can get 3 points if we perform well. Dean Gibson, the Hibs manager, said the crowd is brilliant. We love it. They are now following us home and away, so we're used to them backing us now. There are times in games when we need them, and there won't be a time more than when we go to Tynecastle. Dave, Hearts Hibs Women now is getting a really big game now. Fans are turning out the numbers, and to have potentially over 12,000 in that game at Tynecastle is going to be fantastic, and it's on TV as well.
Yeah, when you take the so-called top three out of the equation, you can argue it's one of the bigger games in SWPL1 because apart from that, there's not anything else that sparks the imagination. Well, sparks the imagination of women's football, yes, but there's not another game apart from the top games that sparks the publicity that Hearts against Hibs provides, and I think that's a positive thing to have. So great that Hearts got 12,000. It shows the work that's getting done, not just by Hearts, but Hibs within the women's teams. Both Eva Allwood and Dean Gibson are doing some tremendous work. And yeah, Hearts, they've obviously kicked on this year, been absolutely brilliant. And obviously, Georgia Timms has scored a lot of goals, but also they've got a lot of quality in the forward areas. Amy Anderson, Erin Rennie. They've got Caitlin Mickey, they've got Emma Brownlee, I think they've got a good core of youth and experienced Hearts right now, and they just need to kick that on into Sunday. If they can go on Sunday, the main challenge and the main thing for Eva Holland will be how can they expose like a Siobhan Hunter and Joelle Murray, because for me, Hibs are one of the best in the league defensively. I think Murray and Hunter are two of the best defenders in the league, but even Ellis Notley, she can go into defence and do great. Ellis Notley is good in terms of her adaptation. She can play a number of positions, and that adaptability suits Hibs to an absolute T. So they've got a lot of quality. The problem for Hibs right now is they've got Shannon McGregor and Rachel Boyle out injured, so that's going to be a massive worry as far as Hibs are concerned. I do like the sticker Mustafa. I don't think she's called Mustafa, but I know she's got a Mustafa within her name. So, yeah. But Hearts, as I said, got a lot of quality. Jenna Penman as well, centre half. I know her from Aberdeen. So, yeah, they've got a lot of quality, Hearts, and they need to show that on Sunday, I think, because a lot of people are tipping Hearts to be the fourth best team in this WPL1 right now. So, I think Sunday's a good barometer for everybody to see where Hearts and Hibs both are at, because Hibs have had some good results, but so have Hearts. So that Sunday gives us a good indication as to where both teams are at, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Hibs won every game last season. They won 3-0, 3-1 and 4-1, but there's absolutely no doubt that Hearts have picked up. There's only a 3-point gap between the two teams. So, listen, every derby is a difficult game and a big game, but I think if Hearts can win this one, it would be huge. And as I say, I think Eva Olive's done a very, very good job. I think one of the things for me was I was disappointed that Claire Delworth left, because I was a big fan of Claire Delworth, but I think she's at the United now. I don't know how she's getting on, but she was a very, very good player for Hearts.
Yeah, she's Sheffield United. Yeah, in terms of Sunday, I mean, I think I might be horribly wrong here, but I think Hearts have beaten every team in the league apart from the top four, basically, or just now the top four. What I mean is Glasgow City, Rangers, Celtic, and Hibs. I think those are the only teams that they haven't beat since coming up to SWPL1 a few years ago. So winning Sunday would be massive for Hearts. I mean, massive in terms of getting that Edinburgh Derby victory. By the way, I was speaking absolute rubbish because it's just came in my head that Hearts beat Hibs a couple of years ago. So apologies to Hearts for that. Yeah, when you look at Sunday, it's an opportunity to show why you're progressing all the time. It's an opportunity to show why the quality of mind in the Edinburgh area. It's an opportunity to show why they've got so much quality. It's also an opportunity to put women's football on the map. Also, it's an opportunity to get yourself affiliated and engrossed with the Hearts supporters because they've been absolutely brilliant in terms of supporting them home. Also, they've been out in their numbers away from home as well. You were speaking about Hibs and they're travelling, and how Dean Gibson said that. And yeah, Hibs back their team away from home and away from home. They went up to Motherwell at 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, and they went up to a game in midweek in Glasgow and took very good numbers with them. So that's something for them to be proud of, and it's something they'll want to kick on with. So in terms of both teams, they've obviously had high numbers with regards to attendances, and that will keep going. But most importantly, this is a good thing for the women's game because my time when I was working at Forfar Farmington in Aberdeen, ladies, we had crowds of about 50, 75 at the most, maybe 100, 200 if it was like a Rangers or Celtic. I remember there was a game involving Aberdeen women and Spartans where the Aberdeen Ultras were out. No, that's no longer a thing, but it was a 1980s thing. But yeah, we're progressing all the time with attendances, and it's only a good thing for the women's game.
You've actually just made my next point because I was going to say, I mean, how big now do you think women's football is becoming? Because that's pretty much the last two derbies. The Edinburgh derbies have had really big crowds, and it clearly does show the women's game now is really progressing from where it was before.
Yeah, no, totally good. I mean, that just shows you where we're going and the product we're having. And that's irrespective of how the national team are getting on as well, because the national team has had a few underwhelming campaigns on the European stage. And a lot of people thought this is the beginning of for women's football in Scotland to an extent, also with COVID-19, but that's not halted back or faltered Scottish women's football by any stretch of imagination. It's actually made it better. And I think the thing is that I think a lot of the clubs are doing tremendous work in terms of getting the grassroots clubs involved, the kids involved, getting them on the pitches at half time, various things such as that. I mean, there was an Aberdeen game, I think had about 200 when they played Hamilton, I think it was. And that was very, very good from an Aberdeen point of view. So when you look at these attendances and you look at what could be how we can move forward. I think the current situation regarding crowds just stresses how good and how competitive and the quality and the the fight the women's game, and that's obviously something that's going to grow and jump as time progresses as well.
I mean, just touching as well on women's game as well. I was looking at the league table earlier on, and Glasgow women have played 19 games. They've conceded 99 goals. They've not got a single point yet, and they've only scored 6 goals. It must be really frustrating for the Glasgow women that obviously there are bigger teams in this league, but it must be really frustrating at the moment that, you know, after 19 games, they're conceding so many goals and they've not picked up a point yet.
Yeah, no. I watched a bit of their game against Partick this on Wednesday because Partick were live streaming the game, and it looked as although it was a Glasgow women's side, low confidence, bereft of confidence, absolutely. It was a Glasgow women's side looking for answers, and I speak to a guy from Partick Thistle fairly regularly because he does the SFF podcast for women's football with me. There's a guy called Vinny Ferguson, and he's like the match day announcer for Partick, and I was having a good conversation with him about Glasgow women yesterday, and I was making the point about them only having 3 subs, and if you take Honeyman out of the team, there's nobody in that team that you're looking at and going, they're absolutely brilliant. I think Honeyman's a good player and understandably captain of that team at this precise moment in time. And it's not going to get any better for Glasgow. The worrying factor is, I know we've got the split coming up, and that might be a blessing in disguise to an extent, but the worrying thing is they'll still have to play probably Rangers City and Celtic again. So that goal tally could be getting even worse than what it is right now, and that's not a good look at all.
Yeah, 100%. So we've 20 minutes in already, and I've not mentioned the Viaplay Cup Final yet. There's a reason for that, because we do have guests coming on. So I'm trying to get through as much as I can before we bring them on, obviously. Before we get back to the football as well, on Sunday, there's a small matter of a Six Nations game between Scotland and France in Paris. Scotland, remarkably, are 2 wins from 2 for the first time since 1996. Scotland have won the opening 2 games in the Championship. Finn Russell at the moment, probably for me, the best player in the Scotland team just now. And I said this at the start of the tournament. I said that there is no reason that Scotland can't win this Six Nations. 2 wins out of 2. We are now going up against the second best team in the world in France. Dave, it's a massive opportunity for Scotland, because after this, Scotland have got 2 games at home against Ireland and Italy. This game on Sunday is going to be a huge, huge test for Scotland. But again, there's no reason they can't come through this.
Absolutely. I mean, they've shown how they can overcome the hardest of games. And I think it's been good from a Scottish point of view to have a break. But then a tough test awaits them on Sunday. But, I mean, Scottish rugby is not the most popular sport in Scotland, right? It's not football is paramount, set primarily to rugby in Scotland. But even football fans alike were absolutely joyous a fortnight ago when Scotland went and beat Wales at Murrayfield, and it was an absolutely fantastic display from Scotland. I was watching it in a social club with a friend, and we just couldn't believe how good Scotland were. And we had to leave the game 10 minutes early to catch a train, but even then they were still on the front foot and still scoring tries. So I think Robinson's implemented an attacking intent to the Scotland side. Beforehand, they were a little bit laid back, they were a little bit subtle, but now they're forward thinking, they'll score tries, they're instant, they're ruthless, and that's exactly what you expect from a Scotland rugby team. So very, very good from that point of view. And the opportunities are endless. The sky's the limit. Six Nations. I think you're halfway there, Graham, and you could be dreaming. We're dreaming right now, but I think the dreams will come a bit of a reality after Sunday.
France are 13 games unbeaten. They've beaten New Zealand, they've beaten South Africa. But for me, I've just mentioned his name a minute ago, in Finn Russell, we've got one of the most outstanding players at the moment. As a fly half, he is this season's leading point scorer. He's got the most carries other than any other number 10. He's made the most meters. He's also made the most passes and most assists. He's probably playing the best rugby of his career. And if Scotland are going to have a chance on Sunday, I think Finn Russell's going to be a major player in that.
Yeah, Finn Russell's been a colossal part for Scotland the last few years in particular. He's a very experienced figure for Scotland. He's a player that carries a lot of euphoria. He's a player that carries a lot of enthusiasm when playing for Scotland. And he's quite simply one of the better players for Scotland at this precise moment in time. He's a player that, for me, should be playing at the highest level of rugby possible. We're grateful that he's Scottish, or if not, he'd probably get a game like England or Wales or France. So, yeah, we're absolutely grateful to have him. And that just goes to show you the quality we have. But it's not only about Finn Russell. Finn Russell will have a major part to play in the game on Sunday, but and Robinson's implemented a collectiveness about Scottish rugby. He's implemented a collectiveness about the team, and that's going to be massively important come Sunday. So here's hoping that we can get a lot of positives that come out of Sunday, and we can get another victory to savour, because a record against France hasn't been great over the last few years, and you do mention they're undefeated at 13. So for me, I think it's going to be the biggest test for Scotland.
Yeah, I mean, the Scotland team for Sunday is Hogg, Steen, Jones, Tuipulotu, Van der Merwe, Russell, White, Schumann, Turner, Fagerson, Gray, Gilchrist, Ritchie the captain, Watson and Fagerson. Replacements are Brown, Batty, Nell, Gray, Skinner, Dempsey, Price and Kinghorn. it's honestly a massive, massive chance for Scotland, and hopefully Scotland can come out of France with a victory. And I'm delighted to say that we are joined by a man that I love listening to. It is Mr. Paul Mitchell. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Graham, I'm very well. Thank you for having me along.
Absolute
You
pleasure.
like your rugby, do you, Paul?
Oh, I love my rugby. I really do. I mean, I've done some international stuff. I've done, the Pro 14 as it was, Pro 12, Super 6. Yeah, I do love my rugby. And Scotland have got a wee chance tomorrow. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we are just talking about Scotland, and we are 2 wins out of 2. It's probably something that a lot of Scottish folk didn't expect. And now, I know that a while ago there was a lot of folk that maybe didn't really think Gregor Townsend was the man. Is he starting to turn folks' opinions now?
There's only one thing that matters, and this is in rugby, it's in football. Anything else, when it comes to managers, do you win? That is it. I don't think there's any case of turning people around or anything like that. Because don't get me wrong, Graham. Scotland get horsed in the next 3 games. Gregor Townsend ain't the man, as far as people are concerned. So it's purely a results business. I happen to think he's good. I do like him. I like the way he plays rugby. But it's all about results, and I don't think we've been lucky so far. I have to say, I think we've deserved both wins. We beat England comfortably. I wish England would get better and start giving us a bit more of a game. And Wales are in turmoil. I mean, Welsh rugby is just in an absolute shambles. They obviously threatened to strike at the weekend, which is almost unprecedented. But they are a mess in the Principality, and it's really sad to see down there.
I was mentioning to David about Finn Russell. He, for me, has been absolutely outstanding. And I said to Dave a minute ago, he, for me, could be the matchmaker and the difference maker in that France game.
Yeah, he's a James McFadden type player, isn't he, if you want to go with football, because he can change a game. He's just got that little bit of magic about him. And we don't have a lot of players like that traditionally. Over the years, we've had our share. But Finn Russell just gives you that little bit of mischievous magic that you need at international level that can help you win games.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get on to the football. Now, we are going to talk about Celtic and Rangers very, very shortly, but there are 4 games tomorrow in the Premier League. We've got Aberdeen against Livingston, we've got Kilmarnock against Motherwell, we've got Ross County against Dundee United, and we've got St Johnstone against St Mirren. Paul, I'll come to you first. Aberdeen against Livingston. We all know that Aberdeen have not had a very good season so far. They're sitting 7th in the league. They were beaten very comfortable against Celtic last week. They're up against the Livingston side that were beaten 3-0 by Rangers last week. Again, Rangers are very comfortable. What's your thoughts on this big game at Pittodrie tomorrow? It's a massive game for both teams, really.
It's great, isn't it? And this is where, the top 6 people see as an artificial prize, but it's a prize nonetheless. And if we didn't have the top 6 split, we wouldn't be talking about this game with, I think, such relish. I like the top 6, always have, because it gives every game an edge. Aberdeen's home form has been great. They've played some beautiful football at home this season, but a bit like Kilmarnock and Dundee United, they can't travel. Livingston, the only thing you're going to get out of Livingston is a really strong performance. They play better football than people think. I know people hate their home pitch. I presume some of their players don't like it either. But they'll enjoy going to Pittodrie. I think footballers always sense when another team has got a weakness about them, and Aberdeen have got if not a weakness, then they've got a fragility about them. Got to remember, they've rebuilt the centre half department. In the January transfer window, they allowed Anthony Richardson to go out on loan. He'd been a stalwart, he'd been the captain up there. So it's a real turnover. I must admit, I like Barry Robson. I like what he's come out and said. He wants the job. Not many caretaker managers come out and tell you that. He wants the job. He thinks he's the right man for it. And if it's going to be the right man for it, and again, it's just touching on what we spoke about, with Gregor Townsend. It's not necessarily performances that will get you jobs like this. It's winning games. Look at Motherwell and Stuart Kettlewell. 2 all of a sudden Motherwell's rosy and he gets the gig. So I think it's going to be a really intriguing match that way. It wouldn't surprise me if Aberdeen win, because I say genuinely at home this season they've been pretty good.
I've said this to Dave, and I've said it to Michael as well on the shows before, that Dave Cormack needs to get this next appointment right, because he's got the last 2 wrong, and he knows that himself. Do you think Barry Robson will get that job, or are they going to look somewhere else? Or is tomorrow another job interview for Barry Robson? If he wins that, he's in pole position to get it.
I'd give it to him till the end of the season. If unless you've got an outstanding candidate in mind, and by that I'm not doing Barry down. You've got to look at a really strong, experienced manager that you think is going to make a difference. You're not going to sign any more players. You're not going to go down. I mean, realistically, you're not going to go down. I was just looking at the table, a little bit. I mean, Aberdeen are 32 points, so they're 11 points ahead of Ross County. Now, given the fact that Ross County from 26 games have got 21 points, hard to see them, almost doubling Aberdeen's tally over the next 12 games. So I don't think that'll happen. So I'd give it to Barry Robson, and he's the man in possession. He's the man of the building. I would let him get on with it.
Dave, is Barry Robson a viable option? Obviously, it's a massive game tomorrow. Aberdeen-Livingston's a very big game, especially given the fact that there's only 3 points between them. Livingston sitting 6th, Aberdeen sitting 7th. It's a big game. Is Barry Robson a man that you would be quite happy to see in charge of Aberdeen?
Yeah, absolutely. But as Paul said, he wants the job. And I think Aberdeen can go this one or two ways. They can either appoint him now, well, not appoint him now, but appoint him soon, or wait till the end of the season and get somebody in. But for me, Barry Robson's been my man for the job. And I'll tell you why Barry Robson's my man for the job. He's different to Liam Fox, right? They're both similar in terms of coaching credentials, in terms of they've managed similarly, they've managed at similar levels, they've managed at kids level, they've managed at lower league level within Scottish football. But what you get from Barry Robson is you get a clarity, you get a steeliness from him, you get a consistency in his messaging, you get a mentality that you perhaps don't get with Fox. Now, I hate drawing parallels between the two of them, but that's the impression I get from outside looking in whenever I hear both of them speaking. So I think from an Aberdeen point of view, you'd offer Aberdeen something completely different now. Aberdeen have went down the schoolboy route or the apprentice route, and they've went down the experience route with Jim Goodwin. And I think Barry Robson's a bit of in the middle. He's got a bit of experience, but also he's still to a degree serving his apprentice. So for me, Aberdeen still need to appoint a director of football as well, which I think would be massive for Aberdeen moving forward. And if they can get the right calibre of appointment in, then there'd be no hesitation from my perspective behind appointing Barry Robson as the new Aberdeen manager. Now, you touched on Dave Cormack there, and I would like to make a point here that best wishes to Dave Cormack in his recovery, because obviously he's away to get a surgery, and that was reported last Sunday by the football club, of course. So by all accounts, Graham, it'll be Alan Burrows, Molly Garner, and Stephen Gunn, and Craig Brown that will make the big decisions regarding next manager at Aberdeen. And for me, I think it's a fresh outlook that Burrows is coming in. We touched upon it last week, of course, but I think it's a bit of a fresh outlook because Dave Cormack's had a bit of animosity and friction with Aberdeen fans of late. So I think Aberdeen having a fresh face in and a fresh brain to look at things with fresh eyes can only be a good thing for the club.
Yeah, definitely. Paul, in terms of Livingston, I always feel that Dave Martindale goes under the radar a lot. I think he's a very, very good manager. He gets the best out of that squad. Again, they don't have a lot of funds. They've had a very, very good season. And I think going to Pittodrie is a game that's not going to worry them. And for me, Joel Nubley, again, could have a massive say in this game because I'm a massive fan of Nubley's as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to see him. He was bought and farmed out because they wanted to season him. I think he's been seasoned at Arbroath. He's come in. He doesn't get involved enough at times for me. That would be my only criticism. I'd like to see him get involved a little bit more. And he needs to, if he's going to, and Livingston fans will hate me, but if you're going to play well and make a move upwards, he needs to start scoring just a few more goals as well. He's got a nice touch. He's got nice movement. I think he's learnt well. I think he got educated well at Arbroath. I think Dave Martindale will try and just encourage that and nurture that along. The other thing for Livingston, they've got a good goalkeeper. Shamal George is very, very good. I think he goes under the radar slightly. You then look, Fitzwater's pretty reliable, Oberlei's reliable. You get Devlin in at right back. You've got a squad full of good players. And you know what? I'd love to, and it won't happen. Don't get me wrong, this won't happen. I'd love to see Livingston dig up their pitch and put a grass pitch down and let that squad develop at home as well. None of these pitches are any good to play top flight professional football on. And it does put some players off going to certain clubs because you don't want to play on these surfaces. Now, on the flip side of that, before fans get upset, I understand the economics behind it. I understand fully why those pitches and surfaces are there. But if you want to play at the highest level, you want a decent grass pitch, and I'm sure the Livingston players would love it. They keep punching above their weight, yeah, and they will continue to do so. They remind me a little bit like Hamilton were. Hamilton did so well in the top flight for so long. But Livingston will have a bad season at one point, and it'll be a question of can they bounce during that bad season. But I mean, they're doing terrifically well at the moment. They've won 4 times on the road this season. They're confident, a confident side.
Yeah, 100%. Another team that will probably be very confident is Motherwell, because they go to Kilmarnock tomorrow. Motherwell on the back of a 2-0 victory over my Hearts team, who were dreadful last week, I'm not going to lie. Kilmarnock, after a 2-0 defeat to Hibs last week, they're sending off a Kelly Vassell, which didn't get overturned. I'm a bit surprised about that because, again, I didn't think there was a lot of malice in that challenge. Paul, I don't know what you thought of that Hibs Kilmarnock game last week. Did you feel it was a red card? Did you feel that would get overturned?
It's interesting because I heard the manager's reactions before I saw the pictures, and I often think that's quite a nice way to do it. I think Derek McInnes was genuinely shocked. Even a yellow card. And this is where it comes down to, and I keep telling people this, it's not the rules of football, it's the laws of football. Rules are black and white, yes or no, tick, cross. It's really that simple. Laws are there to be interpreted. Everybody interprets them differently. I don't think anybody in the pitch was looking for a red card, and to me that tells you all you need to know. It may well be technically within the letter of the law, correct if you want to apply the law. But there's 2 things. There's the letter of the law and there's the spirit of the law. And to me, no way is that a red card in terms of the spirit of the game. Hibs players weren't looking for it. Wasn't needed.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, Hibs only seem to beat 10 men just now, but they won the game. But I genuinely was, when the thing came out this week about Kilmarnock appealing that, I thought they're going to look at that, they're going to realise that there was no intention there, and they'll overturn it. I know nothing clearly because it didn't get overturned. Were you surprised it never got overturned?
Can I be honest and say no? Now, I'm in agreement with Paul on what he's saying, but I think the game's changed. The game's changed massively. And not that Vassell was silly or he was in danger of an opponent or anything like that, but when you lift your feet so high, when you try and have that level of danger, you're always going to find yourself in trouble. I mean, I said publicly on social media a couple of weeks ago that I don't think Ryan Edwards should have been sent off for the tackle on the Hearts player. And that got appealed, and the appeal got turned down. So, being honest, the SFA have their own way of doing things, as you guys will acknowledge very much so. And whenever there's an appeal to the SFA, it only needs to be justifiable evidence from a club's perspective in order for it to be rescinded. Being honest, I don't think there was enough evidence from Kilmarnock's point of view to justify Vassell getting leave for this weekend. So, as much as I didn't agree with the decision at the time, I can understand why it was given.
Paul, Motherwell go into this in the back of 2 wins in a row. They were very good against Hearts last week. They were a far better team. Stuart Kettlewell's now got the full-time manager's job. Was that a surprise? Did you think that was coming, or did you think we might go with somebody left field? Because there was a lot of talk about Ian Holloway and potentially Grant McCann, but Kettlewell's got the job now. Right appointment for you?
Well, yeah, I don't think there's another series of Peaky Blinders coming up, so Stuart was available. I've worked with Stuart a few times. Nice guy. Did really well at Ross County. I think that gets a little bit overlooked, and, you one sort of bad run of results and he got binned from there. Knows the game. I like talking football with Stuart. And I'm delighted to see him get the chance. I felt really sad for Stevie Hamill. I did the cup tie for the Beeb Wraith Rovers. And it's just one of these things. You watch Liam Kelly made arguably 2 mistakes in the game, which is not like him. Terrific goalkeeper. Probably not made 2 mistakes like that all season. And And, and all of a sudden, and you could just tell by the way that Stevie Hamill was walking down the touchline on his own at the end of the game that it was over for him. I did wonder back when they brought Stuart Kettlewell to the club, to the role he was in, which is a role he was perfectly suited for, whether it was in the minds, and it might not be, could just be speculation, whether it was in the minds of, we've got somebody else in the building, should, the Stevie Hamill appointment not work. I feel for Stevie Hamill. He was doing a great job at the academy. He's now at a gig. He took the manager's job, and that can happen. But yeah, I think Stuart Kettlewell, he's gone in. Obviously, the players have responded. I was having a little look at the way he set up his side. I mean, Hearts were terrible on Sunday, but Motherwell didn't allow them really to do much either. There's two sides to every story, and like Dave and yourself, I looked at social media. The Hearts fans were not happy. I watched the game in the company of my eldest son, who's a Hearts fan. He was not happy. But you've got to appreciate, how Motherwell did. The other thing that you've got to look at with Motherwell, they've had to scramble around to get a couple of central defenders as well. But unlike Aberdeen, all of theirs are injured. So Callum Butcher comes in, who's a midfield player, really can play centre half. Dan Casey's very raw at this level. They've done okay. They've got potential. I look at their Motherwell squad and think they could just do a little bit better. Kevin Van Veen, they've got a goal scorer, and that always helps. So yeah, I think it's bright for Motherwell. But the thing that I'd like to see them do is just nail down a few positions with a longer term in mind. Guys you might see there for 3, 4, 5 years. Some of the signings, I think, 1 year deals, 1.5 years. Somebody's coming in January. I don't think do the club always that good, and you get that little bit more squad turnover than you would like.
Yeah, the Robbie Nielsen out calls were very vast again last week, because I knew they would be, because they got beat, and that's what tends to happen after Hearts get beat.
Ridiculous. You know what? I mean, I've checked this, and I like my statistics, and I've gone back 100 years. Hearts have never gone through a league season unbeaten. It's just one of these things, at the top flight. It does not happen. You are going to have a bad week. And I get that supporters get frustrated, but if you look back through everything, you cannot get 30, 35, 38 top performances in a season. Sometimes just go, hey, wasn't our day, and move on. Look for a pattern. Don't look for the one-off. I do find it the overreaction a little bit tedious.
Yeah, it is crazy. I've said this numerous times. It is crazy that whenever Hearts get beat, it's a Robbie Nielsen out. I saw a poll actually yesterday that somebody put on about should they stay, should they go, and it was just like, seriously, get a grip, honestly. But that's just the way that some Hearts fans are, unfortunately. I like to think I'm more balanced than that. But Dave, in terms of tomorrow, I generally don't know. I generally can't call this one. Kilmarnock against Motherwell. It's a difficult game. Kilmarnock again. Last week against Tibbs, they did okay till the sending off, but they were 2-0 down. It's a tough game to call, this one.
I fancy Motherwell tomorrow. And I'm not just saying that because Motherwell have went and picked up 2 wins within the last couple of games under the tutelage of Kettlewell. I'm saying this because I just think Kilmarnock will be a little bit isolated in the forward areas. I think there'll be a responsibility in players such as Daniel Armstrong. And whether they'll have enough in the final third, I'm not 100% convinced about that. I just think Motherwell have a better balance about them just now. As Paul says, they've had to kind of scramble for centre halves. But Carl Butchers came in, did a terrific job, and Motherwell seemed to have a better cohesion across the park, not just defensively. And that's proven to be successful for them in recent times. I mean, Van Veen's looking like a bit of a threat. And Paul's obviously watched Motherwell against Arbroath and Rayford, and I was at the Arbroath Motherwell game as well. When you watch Motherwell, and I watched Motherwell at Gayfield, and I've made the point to you, Graham, that I didn't think Motherwell were... I thought they were effective. I think there was still certain improvements within their play, but I think they're finding the best of both balances now. I mean, Stephen Hamill, what's happened with him has happened with him. It was a real shame considering he was a club legend. He had an absolute legacy in Fir Park. That's a bit of a back against it now, but yeah, in terms of Motherwell, they've got a lot going well for them, and I fancy them to keep that going for tomorrow. But Paul, I'm going to ask you a question. Stephen Hamill, do you think he should have maybe been kept within the club, but maybe back to his youth development role, or maybe an upstairs role, considering the part he played at Motherwell beforehand?
I think it's very difficult. I think you can do it if you're caretaker manager for a few games, but not when you've been in charge for the number of games, that he was in charge. You're then in the building with a new manager. I just don't think there's a way back for that. What I think there is, I think there's an opportunity for 5 or 6 clubs who need somebody at their academy to go and take him, because I think he's well worth getting. Wouldn't surprise me if he ends up at Aberdeen, given the connection with where Alan Burrows is going. I mean, that's speculation, but it's very difficult to go back. You're then always a presence, and if he'd given it up at the end of the season and gone back to the academy job, that would have been different. But it just didn't work. And it's little things. I mentioned Liam Kelly making those 2 errors. You mentioned the Arbroath game. I mean, Mandron, who scored the 2 goals, hasn't played since he's injured. Stephen Blaney has been was brilliant in that game. Came in, made his debut centre half. Hasn't been seen virtually since he's injured. He had absolutely no luck at the times where he needed luck. And yeah, I don't blame Motherwell for pulling the trigger. Stevie Hamill, if he'd said no to the job, would still be in a job today and probably one for the next 4 or 5 years. That's the chance you take when you go into the big chair.
That's the Craig Levein factor there, Graham.
To any Celtic Rangers fans watching, don't worry, I am coming. I know it's a big game, and I am coming, but I want to get through the games that are tomorrow before I start on that. Otherwise, tomorrow as well, Ross County against Dundee United. Again, another big game, 11th against 12th. Dundee United are a point behind Ross County in bottom place. Again, Paul, this is another hard game to call. Last week, Ross County lost 1-0 to St Mirren. Dundee United obviously had a disappointing afternoon against St Johnstone with that terrible mistake from Mark Brigitte. Again, another game that I really find quite hard to call.
Yeah, this is my game tomorrow. This is my game for Sports Scene tomorrow. So I've been doing my research on that today, and you can always find some brilliant statistics. I mean, Dundee United, their only away win this season has been at St Johnstone. They've scored 11 times in the last 12 away games. They don't score. Ross County don't score at home either. So I mean, I don't think it's going to be a goal fest. I think it'll be a really, really interesting game. Liam Fox has come out and said to the fans, don't boo the players, boo me. Well, that might well happen before the end of the 90 minutes if it's not going the way of Dundee United. I like the idea of Liam Fox taking it on himself. He's not hiding. It's the best ground that Dundee United could be going to tomorrow. They have got a phenomenal record at Dingwall. I mean, Ross County have actually beaten Dundee United in the League Cup and the Scottish Cup since the last time they beat Dundee United there in the league. It is not a good ground for Ross County when Dundee United come to town, and they'll just be hoping that their luck in that continues.
What have you made of Ross County this season, Paul? Because obviously they've been a bit up and down. Malky Mackay has brought in Simon Murray, which I think was a surprise to a lot of folk. They brought in Eamon Brophy. Do you think that they can stay in this league? And has Malky Mackay done a decent enough job of what he's got?
The problem with Ross County is that they virtually have to build a team every year. They're not in the habit of giving out. Well, they probably gave out more 2-year deals this year than in previous years, but they lost their best players, the goal scorers from last season, and that's the hardest thing in the whole league, to replace. And I think what you've seen with Malky Mackay is he uses contacts in England very well to get players to come up, but it's just not quite worked at the same level. I mean, looking at their team, because I've got their team from last week, because as I say, I'm doing the game tomorrow. I mean, it's not a bad starting 11. You've got a good goalkeeper in Laidlaw. I mean, Watson's a good player. Baldwin, Yakovidi, all good players. Conor Randall's experienced. So you've got a lot of experience there. They need more goals out of Jordan White. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Simon Murray and Eamon Brophy coming in, I think pretty much tell you. Excuse me.
You all right? We'll come back to Paul in a minute. Dave, in terms of Dundee United, they had the AGM this week. Mark Ogden basically saying that there won't be a change. And I saw a thing on Twitter as well from, I think it was a Federation United supporters who put out some bullet points from that press conference. A lot of United fans are not happy about the way that Mark Ogden handled that. What's your thoughts on that whole thing?
Hope Paul's okay, or else Ross County Dundee won't get any commentary tomorrow. But yeah, when you no, first and foremost on the Dundee front, I mean, it was never going to be a good ending. It was never going to end very well. I mean, irrespective of what happened, unless Tony Ashkar had practically went and resigned immediately, as and when he walked into Tannadice Tuesday morning, it was never going to happen. I mean, Mark Ogren's Dundee precisely because of the goings on with the Legends Day that they had last weekend, and also Ashkar's getting a lot of criticism at this precise moment in time. For me, I've thought about it numerous times all week. It's got recollections and remembrance for me behind the Stephen Thompson days for the club, when Stephen Thompson did some tremendous work alongside his old man Eddie, but then the Stephen's reign at Dundee came to a summer end because of how things prevailed in his final season in charge at Tannadice, because quite simply his final season in charge at Tannadice was just not good enough. We're getting managers and getting players, and it just simply wasn't good enough from Stephen Thompson's perspective. And the sour point from Thompson's point of view was when he sacked Jackie McNamara. Now, I doubt Tony Ashkar will go into the Ross County boardroom. But what I think will happen is a long journey home for Dundee tomorrow, and you could see this possibly happening. And I think there's possible. I think there's possible parallels between Ashkar and Thompson that a lot of people are underestimating, especially in the media game. So I think, as far as this is concerned, I think Dundee are walking in a bit of a tight rope. It's a little bit of a dodgy rock they're walking on at this precise moment in time. They need to watch what they're doing. They need to climb onto something. And then they've got, this is arguably the biggest game of the season. I found it quite fascinating that Liam Fox downplayed the whole thing tomorrow. He was getting asked by the broadcast media, it's just your biggest game of the season. It was like, it's big, but it's not the biggest. And I thought he did quite well to kind of play the media down to an extent, because it would have been very, very easy for him to go and say the old cliche, saying it's massive, it's massive, it's big, it's big, it's big, it's the biggest game, and all that kind of terminologies. But I think he did tremendously well to play down the game. But also, as Paul said, I also think he did tremendously well, Liam Fox, to say that boo me, not the players. But if Dundee put in a pitiful performance, then the Dundee fans have no choice but to be the players, and that's not going to be a good look on them at all. And then that's the thing. For me, I think Jack Human deserves to start goals tomorrow. I'm just going to put that out there. Berigiti, he had that mistake against against Johnson last week. He's obviously had a few mistakes this time at Dundee United. Alongside that, Berigiti's had a few times where he's back from injury, but for me, I think Human deserves a chance. Did tremendously well. There's one stint to Peter Head, and has a lot of, for me, has a lot of the criteria that you expect in a goalkeeper. So for me, I think he should start tomorrow. But I see Wayne Fox has told the written press that he's going to hang on to the last moment before making a decision on that front. So that's rather fascinating. But I mean, Dundee have got us wrong, and I don't think Liam Fox was the right appointment for Dundee. I still remain that way in my opinion. I just think he'd have been better as an assistant manager than he would have been a manager. And it's not been a good look for Dundee at all. I can understand why they went for a guy like Liam Fox, because when you look at Jack Ross, obviously an experienced figure in football, and he didn't just cut it at Tannadice. But then they went with the town courts approach, and it just hasn't worked off for the club, unfortunately.
Paul,
yeah, I don't know what will last. Yeah, I don't know what will last tomorrow. My throat or Liam Fox. I think there's a couple of things. I mean, Dave makes the point. I was at that game where Dundee United sacked Jackie McNamara and helped break the story on Radio Scotland. And it was very bizarre because, basically, as Dave said, they cleared the boardroom and got Jackie McNamara out the door. I mean, when I was interviewing Tommy Wright, I said, he's gone. That's bizarre. The problem for Liam Fox tomorrow, and I'll see if you can pick up the thread of this. So I did radio commentary for Hibs 6, Aberdeen 0. Something happened after that game. I was pitch side for Rangers against Partick Thistle. Something happened at that game later that evening. And I did Wraith Rovers against Motherwell.
So, Paul,
I'm
you're
currently the
what you're saying.
Grim Reaper. Yeah, I'm the Grim Reaper of commentators at the moment. So Liam Fox, I think, should be rightly concerned that I'm doing his game tomorrow. You know what? It will be fun.
I was just going to say, quick question before we move on to the last game tomorrow. You're doing the game tomorrow. Are you expecting to see Mark Birighitti in goal for United? Or as Dave said, does Jack Newman deserve a start? Because that last week, and it's not the first time, Mark Birighitti made a horrendous mistake.
It's a question you've got to ask yourself. What are you going to get if you put in Jack Newman? You're going to get a young goalkeeper thrust into a really important game. He's got experience for Peterhead, but with respect to Peterhead, that just ain't the same. It's suddenly between the sticks. If it was at Tannadice, I'd play Newman. It's not at Tannadice. I'd play Mark Birighitti.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that. And we are joined by a new person to our show who looks, I'm not going to lie, he looks about 5, but it is Oren. Oren, how are you doing, pal?
I'm good, how are you?
Not too bad, my man, not too bad. We are going to talk about Celtic in a minute because I know you're a Celtic fan, aren't you?
I'm indeed, yep.
So we are going to touch on the Celtic Rangers game in about 5 minutes, but we've got one more game to preview. That is tomorrow, and that is a Battle of the Sainties at McDermott Park. Johnston against St Mirren. St Johnston obviously beating United 2-1 last week. St Mirren, very, very comfortable. It was only 1-0 against Ross County, but it was very comfortable. Paul, again, another very tight game this tomorrow.
Yeah, there's not much to choose between them. I think St Johnstone are finally settling themselves down. I think Stephen Robinson's built St Mirren into a decent team. They're not that brilliant on the road. That's the usual problem of teams. I think they've lost 8 times on the road this season, so they've not been brilliant. They've based it on their home form. St Johnstone, though, if you look at their home form over the last 2 or 3 seasons, has been utterly appalling. And I think that that's the one you've got to get right. And I think Callum Davidson's acutely aware of it. 13 goals they've scored in 12 home games, simply not enough. And it's always a question with St Johnstone, can you get the goals from Stevie May? And he delivered last week, played really well last week. We talk about the Birighitti error. Stevie May still had to do his job, which he did. That'll be a really good game. I would expect hopefully some goals in that, and neither of the 3 potential results would surprise me. Which is, I know that sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but nothing coming out of that game would surprise me.
Dave, I mean, St Mirren have had a very good season. They win tomorrow. They go 4th. Again, Robinson's done a very good job. Again, maybe a little bit like David Martindale, maybe goes a bit under the radar. This is a big game for both these teams tomorrow, but a St Mirren win puts them 4th.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge for St Mirren because, as Paul touched upon, their away record is as good as the home record. I mean, they're very, very astute at home. They're a very strong side at home. Stephen Robinson's got to play the right way whenever they're at home. But I think away they're just missing that little bit of a spark now. Paul, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I watched St Mirren at Pittodrie, and they ran Aberdeen all over the shop at Pittodrie recently. How much away wins have they had this season?
Well, St Mirren have had 2 away wins, 2 draws. They've lost 8 times. They've only scored 11 times on the road. And again, that's the concern for me, is them finding goals away from home.
There you go, Graham. I've seen one of St Mirren's 2 away wins this season, and that was at Pittodrie. That just tells you how bad Aberdeen were 4 weeks ago. So when I watched St Mirren that evening in question at Pittodrie, I was very impressed with their forward line. They had no Johnny Younger that night in question. I think if St Mirren don't get top 6 or they don't get European football, to a certain extent, it could be on that prospect. Because Johnny Younger was Tony was very good as well. But Tony Watt is lacking a bit of fitness as far as I'm concerned. you could say attitude, but I don't really buy into that analogy, if I'm going to be honest. I think it's more fitness because he's not playing regularly at Dundee United, in all honesty. And obviously, Tony Watt's a bit of a, not a hothead, but he's a bit of a character, which obviously means you have to manage him in a certain way. So maybe understand, obviously, that perspective. But when you look at this game tomorrow, St Johnson's important they get back to winning ways. And they obviously have a lot of quality and prowess and potency in the final third. They've got Clark, they've got May, they've got Zach Grunin. I think Zach Grunin did get a lot of credit at Dundee. I'm very impressed with Grunin. I just don't think the Dundee fans took them a little bit. So I think St Johnstone have a good array of options this season. As Paul said, St Johnstone don't score as much goals at home, but what I would say is, in comparison to last season, there's still night and day numerous improvements surrounding that club. So they're in a good place, South St Johnstone, and they obviously got a very good win at Tarnace last weekend. So they'll both get a kick on from this and move on, and obviously try and get into that top six in what's probably going to be a battle to them, Aberdeen, St Mirren, Hibs, and Livingston. So.
Oren, St Mirren playing European football, is that a possibility?
I think it is, to be honest with you. Obviously, their home form has been great this season. You know, they have had some issues with away form, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if they finish in the top 5, which I think they will, to be honest. They've been good for the majority of the season, and finishing top 5 for them would be great, and it's just a testament to how Stephen Robinson has done this season.
In terms of St Johnstone, Oren, I mean, what have you made of Callum Davidson this season? Because obviously last season he had a very poor season on the back of winning 2 cups, on the back of top 6 football. There was a lot of talk about Davidson getting sacked last season, which again, I just find a bit bizarre. This season, they are sitting 8th. Again, up and down season like a lot of teams. What do you reckon of their season so far?
I think they have improved from last season. You know, at home, they seem to have a bit more kind of spirit with them. Obviously, they've made a few additions too, which has clearly helped the squad. I think the addition of Nicky Clark's been good, you know. So it's kind of been a mixed bag for them. I think they... I don't think they're too far off Aberdeen and kind of the rest of the teams who are around 7th, 6th. But from what I have saw, I think they do still lack a bit of creativity, and obviously their defence still not quite there. However, I have saw improvement from when I saw St Johnstone this season.
Yeah, 100%. Interesting games this weekend, but we are an hour into our show. We've got another hour to go, and let's get to it, because on Sunday, it is the first piece of silverware this season. It is the Viaplay Cup Final between Celtic and Rangers at Hampden Park. I've heard a lot of folk, I'll come to Oren very shortly, but I'm going to come to Paul Mitchell first. Paul, I've heard a lot of folk say this is a very difficult game to call. At the moment, combined, both teams are 33 games unbeaten. Celtic have not lost since they played Real Madrid on the 2nd of November. Rangers unbeaten under Michael Beale. Again, they've not lost again since November. It's a very difficult game to call, but at the moment, I think from what I see so far, Celtic, for me, look the better team.
Yeah, I'll give you my thought. I've only got a couple of minutes left before I've got to go, so I'll give you my thoughts. I'll use my favourite line, which is, this is the most important Old Firm game since the last one, because that's how these things work and everything gets hyped up. I think it's a fascinating contest. Let's be honest. Something's got to give. Will it go to extra time? Highly possible. Will it go to penalties? You could certainly see it. Is there much to choose between the teams? I think Celtic are the slightly better side at the moment. I watched Celtic Aberdeen last week. Celtic toyed with Aberdeen. They've got the movement. They've got the pace down the sides. With bringing in the South Korean, they've got a centre forward in a different mode to what they've had before, which just makes them all the more dangerous. You know, he plays with his back to goal. He's got a lovely touch taking the ball in. You know, that gives them a different option rather than Kyogo going through the middle. So I just think, you know, they've built well. I also think Rangers have turned their squad over a little bit in January. Raskin's a very good player. really good player to watch. He's the kind of guy that should shine at Hampden on a big pitch. If you had to force me to pick someone, I would pick Celtic because they're the league leaders, which tends to suggest they've had the better season. But again, no outcome would surprise me of this because, if you watch Rangers, I think Rangers, if they had Morelos at his peak, would be more dangerous than I think they are at the moment. I'm just never quite sure where Alfredo Morelos is. But Morelos at his peak would be a real danger to them. Cholak, I think, is a good player as well. I love the way how he plays. I just hope it's a good game. I mean, that's the basic bottom line. I hope it's a really good game because you've got two decent teams going head to head. And again, I think we've looked at some of the build up, and I think much was made of the Postecoglou and Beale together. They don't dislike each other. There's no real animosity between them. They're two professional football managers, who want their team to win. Ange Postecoglou had the best line of the season last week to a journalist who'd asked him about, what another manager had said. Just went, look, mate, don't care. I'm not worrying about what 11 other managers are saying, especially when we're not playing them. I think both the managers are playing it right to their own bases. Now, that's the same if it's Rangers Celtic. You would want the same if it was Hibs Hearts. You'd want the same if it was Aberdeen or Livingston. You've got to get the messaging out to your teams. I like both, and I think Celtic have the edge. There you go.
Before you go, is Michael Beale allowing Celtic to score the same as that was against Partick Thistle did last week?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what. So I'll tell you. I was pitch side for that game for Viaplay. And the first player to give an interview was James Tavernier, and James Tavernier explained the story. Michael Beale came into the area about 5-7 minutes later, exactly the same story. I believed him. I think it was the right thing to do. Would he do it again? I believe that he would. And you just got to hope that it doesn't come to pass, because I don't think we want to see another incident like that. We just don't want to see that. I don't know. If you're going to win something, you want to, some people want to win it the right way, and some people just want to win. At the end of the day, I liked what he did. I applaud what he did, and I believe him when he told me that it didn't matter who the opponent was. It was the right thing to do. But I hope we never get a chance to find out.
No, same as I really don't want to see that again. But Paul, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on tonight. A
pleasure. Good to see you all and speak again. Cheers.
See you later, Paul.
Bye now.
Right, Oren, talk about Celtic. You must be absolutely delighted with how so far. Are you looking forward to the game on Sunday?
I am, yeah. It's good. It's a huge one. It's a cup final. First one since the Betfred Cup, won in 2019. Obviously, we've been on great form, as have Rangers. To be honest with you, I think form and all that kind of stuff, I think it does go out of the window. I think in these sort of matches, I think us and Rangers both quite evenly matched. Rangers have brought in some good additions. Todd Cantwell, Raskin, two great players. I'm sure both of them are going to start. But yeah, very nerve-wracking. Hopefully, as a Celtic fan, hopefully we win. But I think it's going to be very close. I think extra time, that's a possibility. But we've just got to wait and see. And yeah.
Are you going to the game? You got a ticket?
Unfortunately not. No. As you can imagine, there was quite high demand for it. But unfortunately, didn't quite get a ticket.
Dave, I mean, as always, as Oren says there, and as Paul said as well, it's all about winning. Celtic at the moment look, for me, the far stronger side. There's obviously talk about Kyogo coming in. I mean, what's your thoughts on this game on Sunday? Because it is, I think, very difficult to call.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was speaking to somebody about this today, and yeah, I think it'll be interesting. For me, it's going to be an interesting one to see how both teams approach it. Yeah, because I mean Rangers are resolute, but they're improved massively under Michael Beale. As you guys have touched upon, they're undefeated under Beale. But I think there's less pressure on Celtic than there is on Rangers. Hopefully, we get Lewis Anderson from Glasgow World on shortly to go and speak about obviously the final, because he's got obviously more of an expertise than I do with regards to the Glasgow club. But yeah, when you look at Postecoglou, I think there's much less pressure on Ange in comparison to Michael, because if Rangers go win on Sunday, it's a massive coup for Michael Beale, I think, because it's his first cup. It's an opportunity for him to go and extend what's been a fine run since taking over as Rangers manager. But for Postecoglou, this will continue the fine work that he's doing at Celtic, where he implemented a squad that gave him nothing to a squad that are achieving lots of great things. Now, from Michael Beale's perspective, he's a bit like Garage Postecoglou, but not in the same manner. He's taken over. He took over the Rangers side. It was a bit of a mess, but putting the basics back into the Rangers side, putting a belief into the Rangers players has helped massively. And Rangers are in a much better place than they were at Christmas time, where and I think in the last few weeks, we were discussing this game. I think in the last few weeks, they've had the performance which has preceded the result as well. In previous times, they had the result but not the performance, but now they've had the performance and the result, and that's been hugely positive as far as Rangers are concerned. And they're in a very good place, but Celtic are as well. I think in terms of the striking department, I think Ange Postecoglou will play a 4-3-3. I don't know if Oran agrees, but I think they will play a 4-3-3. But I think O will play up front. I agree with what Paul Mitchell said. I think the fact that Hampden is massive will help O massively, and it will help him get opportunity.
And we are joined by another guest. He is a football reporter for Glasgow World. I'm hoping he can hear me. I think it's his debut because I've never been on with him before. It is Mr. Lewis Anderson. Lewis, how are you doing?
How you doing, gents? Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. Looking forward to this weekend. I'll be attending the match myself for Glasgow World. So, yeah, it's been a busy couple of days looking ahead to the match.
Oh, it's great to have you on. I'm just talking to Oran there, obviously. Oran's a Celtic fan. Is your game on Sunday? Because, as I've mentioned earlier on before you came on, Celtic are obviously favourites. Both are in very good form. Both are unbeaten. How do you see this game going? Is it going to be one of these games that's going to go to extra time and penalties, or will it be?
I think it has the makings of a real classic. In all honesty, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it will be a really tight contest. You know, obviously you touched on the form coming into it. I think that's both teams still unbeaten since the resumption of the league after the World Cup break there. I think as well, you know, when it comes to League Cup finals between the Old Firm, they're always tasty encounters. If you ask me what the kind of standout memory from is, it's Scott Brown right up in the face of El Hadj Diouf there many, many years ago. So, yeah, there's always a bit of that kind of added needle to the occasion when it's the two big Glasgow clubs contesting it. And I think this final, you know, as you said, given the form that they're both in, it's going to make for a great spectacle. They're 13 wins, 1 draw. As I touched on, it's a massive game for both sides. I'd say slightly more for Rangers, in all honesty. A huge opportunity for Michael Beale to potentially, lay down an early marker, if you like. It looks like they'll struggle to win the league from the position they currently find themselves in, but it'd be a huge statement of intent from him if he was to win the first trophy of the season. It's up for grabs.
Oran, David mentioned there that he thinks the O will start. He obviously played well against Aberdeen last week. Would you agree with that, or are you bringing Kyogo back in?
To be honest, I think I'd maybe just go for Kyogo, just given how consistent he's been. I wouldn't be against maybe starting O due to his physical presence. And obviously it's better than Kyogo's. But in terms of consistency. I think I think it might just be better to start Kyogo. However, with fans, you just don't know. But I don't know. I think my instinct would probably say I would prefer Kyogo. However, as I said, I wouldn't mind Dole starting.
Lewis, that's a question for Lewis. Lewis, you've obviously dealt with Postecoglou a lot. What's his kind of dealings with the media? Because
Postecoglou's on, you go.
Oh, no, sorry. Obviously, Postecoglou's got away, Lewis, obviously. You don't know what you're going to expect from him. What kind of dealings have you had with Postecoglou?
He comes across fantastically well, in all honesty, Dave. I've had nothing but pleasure speaking to him, really. Before, he's always got time for the media. Of course, there's been a couple of occasions of late where the likes of, he's been linked to the Leeds United job. He seems to be getting linked with every Premier League job, and I think getting asked about that constantly gets under his skin a wee bit. But no, he's very good in terms of the way he conducts himself around the media, and likewise Michael Beale. I think he since he's come in, he's had a kind of fresh approach to certain media outlets now that they've resolved their ongoing issues with certain outlets. So they both have been a real pleasure to deal with so far, but. It's a difficult one. Obviously, we saw earlier in the week that they were both sat next to each other at Hampden ahead of one of their press conferences, which was incredibly awkward to watch. I'm pretty sure that you gents will agree on that. But they're both in really confident frame of minds coming into Sunday's match, and rightly so.
Absolutely. Graham's going to be back in a minute. He's just away getting a drink of water, presumably after all the chatting he's done. So, Oren, I'll go back to yourself just very briefly. From a Celtic point of view, what would be your team on Sunday? Do you have a team in mind? Do you have a starting 11 in mind?
So I would go with probably on paper, our strongest team. That would be Hearts, Alistair Johnston, Carter Vickers, Starfelt Taylor, then obviously Moy, Hitati, and McGregor, and then a front three. I'd go with Jota, Kyogo, and Maeda as well.
Absolutely. Lewis, from both a Celtic and a Rangers point of view, because obviously you're a Glasgow World, who would you go for both teams?
I think his own touches on there. In terms of Celtic, I think the team pretty much picks itself really at the moment. Pretty similar. I'm going Joe Hart and goals, a settled back four really that he's tended to adopt. Taylor at left back, Starfelt, Carter Vickers, and Alistair Johnson, who's kind of made the right back spot his own since Juranovic left. Callum McGregor, of course, anchoring the midfield. Rio Hitati, who is simply outstanding against Aberdeen last weekend. And I guess the toughest call that he might have to make is whether or not he goes for Matt O'Reilly or Aaron Mooy. Mooy, of course, been terrific form since returning from the World Cup with Australia, albeit picked up a knock before that game last weekend. I'm told that he's fully fit for this match this weekend, so I'd favour him over O'Reilly just based on current form. I'd have Maeda on the left-hand side just for his tireless work rate and his energy, and of course Jota, who has displayed flashes of his brilliant best in recent weeks. And personally, I would go with Kyogo up front. I think this is too big a game to pitch into from the outset, in my view. And in terms of Rangers, sorry.
Pardon me, sorry, Lewis.
No, in terms of Rangers, I think Michael Beale's obviously got a couple more selection headaches to kind of really think about, mainly in midfield. He doesn't have a full complement of players in there. The goalkeeper position's been widely debated as well. It remains a hot topic. There's a lot of chat around Robbie McCrory being the future number one, but he needs the game time to prove it. I know he's had injuries of late, but I'm hoping that he'll get a run in the team for the second half of the season. But I think it's fairly inevitable he'll stick with Alan McGregor for Sunday's game. Again, Rangers back four picks itself at the moment. Barisic doesn't have any competition for left back, so he starts alongside Ben Davis. Has formed a strong partnership with Goldson in recent weeks. James Tavernier, obviously the captain at right back. And as I said, the midfield is where he's got the kind of biggest headaches to make. I think Nicholas Raskin, as Paul touched on before he jumped off, he's been a fantastic signing. Been really impressed with him since he came in the door. Proper all-action midfielder. He's got a lot of different attributes to his game, and I think he'll start alongside Glenn Kamara for this game. I just think playing Lundstrom or Jack with the injury issues that they've had of late would be a huge risk. So you certainly wouldn't get 90 minutes out of them. So I think Kamara will start. I'd go for Ryan Kent on the left-hand side. Obviously, he's kind of one of their biggest threats. They always look up to him for a moment of magic. I'd have Todd Cantwell in behind in the number 10 role. It's a tough one again. Malik Tillman supposedly very close to returning to full fitness, so he's got a big decision to make over who to start and behind the striker. And I'd favour Fashion Sakala on the right, just based on his recent displays in Old Firm derbies. I think he's been the real kind of shining light for Rangers in derby matches. Alfredo Morelos will lead the line. I'm fully expecting him to start over Cholak at the moment.
Lewis, from your point of view, what was the press conferences like from both sides? Was it Tuesday's press conference, or have you been at numerous press conferences since?
I was just at the managers earlier this week, Dave. Obviously, picked up on some of the comments made by Sakala, which were rather interesting yesterday, referring to Celtic as the other mob. Don't think that went down particularly well, albeit Cameron Carter-Vickers seemed fairly level-headed in his presser this afternoon. But yeah, no, I was at the managers' conference earlier in the week. Postecoglou, of course, talking about winning the cup last year. Obviously, it was his first trophy since taking over the hot seat at Parkhead. Very much looking forward to going back there and trying to defend the trophy. He, as I said, he has fewer injury issues to contend with as well at the moment. So I think he's very much looking forward to the occasion, as is Michael Beale. Will be his first ever cup final as a manager. Didn't get to achieve anything in the short term. He was at QPR really. He's really looking forward to this match. He's kind of kept his cards close to his chest based on his team selection. Obviously, he did speak about having doubts over various players, but he said that in the past, and certain players have been named in the matchday squad. So it'll be a really intriguing next 24 hours to kind of really show up what the kind of final team news is going to be heading into Sunday's game.
By the way, before I go back to Graham, I better promote both of you, because Lewis, you do some great work for Glasgow World, and you're working for Scottish Football Network. So Lewis, you're at a game on Sunday, and what kind of content are you giving us all from Sunday?
We're kind of right across it this weekend. I was out at Hampden Park yesterday around chatting to some local business owners about how they're preparing for the match. Always an exciting occasion for them when there's a big cup final in line. So we've got lots of video content going out over the course of the weekend in the build up to the game. And in terms of the match itself, I'll be right across the press conferences, the mix zone after the game, speaking to hopefully a couple of the players. It's going to be a really busy weekend for us. Keep an eye out for a lot of our reflection stuff going up Sunday evening into Monday. It's going to be an action-packed weekend.
I was going to say, Lewis, are you kneeling down? Because we can only see your glasses and your heat.
No, sorry. I was having issues with my camera. So I'm glad you can hear me okay. Is that any better?
That's better.
There we go.
Sorry, gents. There we go.
We can see it. We can see you in full glory, mate. We can see you. Oren, in terms of one of the players that was mentioned earlier, I want to get your thoughts, Oren, on Aaron Moy. Have you been surprised at how well he's done since he came to Celtic?
Absolutely, yeah. And even just given really the first month or two, he didn't really hit the ground running. But since the resumption of the World Cup, he's been great. He's a Rolls Royce of a midfielder. He's got so much quality, and he's just so consistent. And that's probably why I would start him over O'Reilly. He's got more experience in these kind of big games. But yeah, I'm absolutely surprised. Just given his kind of transformation from his start of his Celtic career to now, and except from this latest kind of O'Reilly and Moy debate, he's kind of made that centre mid role his own, really.
I mean, we touched on this quite a lot, Oren, as well. You look at that Celtic bench like last week against Aberdeen. Kyogo, Haksabanovic, Abada, Kobayashi, Iwata, Bernabe, Bain, Forrest, Ralston. The quality in that Celtic squad, for me, is a lot stronger than the Rangers one.
Yeah, no. Obviously, as a Celtic fan speaking, it could be a bit kind of biased, but no, I do agree. And even just like given that when Ange came in, I mean, it was a bit of a broken squad. But the depth we've got, it's great. Just as you mentioned, we've got Haskabanovic, who hasn't really hit the ground running. We've got Abada, who we know he scored, I think, 3 in his last 2 starts against Rangers. But yeah, the depth, it's quality. It's really, really good.
Lewis, I want to come to you on a point that you made earlier on that I actually going to talk about as well, and it was comments from Fashion Sakala, and that was picked up on quite a bit. Now, yeah, that would be great when you get from Sakala saying that. I mean, is that something that's really going to bother Celtic that was mentioned?
I don't think so, in all honesty. They were interesting comments, to say the least. I don't think Sakala himself kind of really knew how that might be portrayed amongst the Celtic squad. I think Carter Vickers, spoke really kind of intelligently in response to the comments earlier today. I think Celtic won't let it affect them at all. I think Ange Postecoglou has been quite open about how he takes no real interest in what other clubs say or do. I don't see it having a huge impact on them. If anything, comments like that from the Rangers camp will fire the Celtic squad up even more for this game, in all honesty. So I can only see them using the comments to an advantage.
In terms of the Rangers as well, Lewis, another player you mentioned earlier on that you think will start, I do agree with, is Morelos. But we all know that, especially against Celtic, Morelos can get caught up in shenanigans. How important do you think it is? And I think I said this to Dave as well last week, and I used this phrase. How important do you think it is that Morelos, as we stay in Scotland, keeps the heat?
Yeah. Well, I think we've all seen some of his antics in the past. He can be a real hothead, and up against Carter Vickers and Starfelt, he's going to have his work cut out. Really, it's going to be a really tough shift from this weekend. He's going to need a lot of support in terms of the likes of Cantwell and stuff playing closer to him. That was one thing I noticed. I thought in the semi-final against Aberdeen, albeit they eventually came through that match, I thought there wasn't enough support to him, specifically in the first half. Sakala was the kind of chief threat that day. He's a very reactive player. Morelos. If something does get under his skin, he doesn't go about it the right way in terms of it comes across on the pitch. So I think occasions like this, when you're playing into a cup final, you've got to realise that you're not only representing the club, you're representing that there's a wider, that you're representing the fans, you're representing absolutely everyone associated with Rangers Football Club. When it comes to cup finals, you want to be portraying the best image of yourself possible. And it's important for him this weekend. I think the first 15-20 minutes will be telling. If he can get on the ball quite a bit, that will give him a lot of confidence. If that's not the case, then what type of Morelos are we going to see? Are we going to see the type of Morelos that falls into a bit of a huff, a bit of a mood? Or are we going to see someone that's kind of really fired up and doing everything he can to try and push his team over the line?
Dave, Michael B made a comment that I think most people in Glasgow will completely understand, where he said, no one that works in Glasgow enjoys coming second. Second is last. He knows how big a game this is for Rangers. They have to win this game. It doesn't matter how you do it. It can be off someone's backside. As long as you win, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. I mean, Michael Beale's had the same analogies as Steven Gerrard had when he was Rangers manager, because when Gerrard was in charge, he was coming out with those type of verses and phrases and terminologies such as second is last and all this kind of stuff. And he's absolutely right, because if you first second in Glasgow or first second in the Scottish Premiership for Celtic or Rangers, it's deemed as a failure. And we've seen time and time again, gents, how if you don't do successful things, I mean, if you win the Viaplay Cup but fail the Scottish Cup and the Scottish Premiership and fail on European level, that's deemed an absolute tragedy amongst many within Scottish football. So in terms of this Sunday, I think the pressure's off Ange Postecoglou to an extent based on the work he's done at Celtic so far. Now he'll be striving for more. And as the cliche goes, he doesn't stop. They don't stop. Celtic doesn't stop. But exactly the same time for Rangers, I'd argue this is a bigger game for them, because for Rangers, if Beale can get his first silverware so early on in his tenure, I think it's a huge building block and springboard for Beale moving forward in his tenure at Ibrox, because sometimes managers will never know who's the first fight. Managers, I mean, when it comes to cup finals, but also you find managers. Derek McInnes springs to mind. I know he won the trophy the first time with Glasgow Aberdeen in a cup final, but after that, his cup final record was very, very poor to say the least, even although he was playing Celtic in each and every single one of them. Irrespective, it's a reputation and it's something that's you're going to be remembered with. So I think for Beale, I don't think there's much to separate the sides, but as I was touching upon earlier on, I just think that Michael Beale's still got a wee bit of rebuilding to do. Whilst Ange Postecoglou, he's never going to be the first article, but he's got all the pieces in the jigsaw that he'd want to have right now, and he's still got what wee bits that he'll want to upgrade in order to be the complete package from his perspective. So I think it's going to be a quite fascinating game. I think it's going to be a compelling game, and for both sets of managers, it's going to be intriguing to see how they approach it.
Oren, how long have you been a Celtic fan for?
Basically, since I can remember. I think my first Celtic game was when I was 5. I think so. I'm 16 now. So so pretty much been a Celtic fan since I've liked football. I've got a season ticket with Celtic too. So yeah.
God, I feel so old. You're only 16, man. I feel really old now. The reason I'm asking you that is I was checking earlier on. Ange Postecoglou became Celtic manager in 2021. He's played 99 games. He's won 73. He's drawn 10 and he's lost 16. He's got a win rate of 73.74%. Now, I think last week, myself and Dave and maybe Michael had this conversation as well. There's a lot of folk that have particular narratives between the Brendan Rodgers era and the Ange Postecoglou era. What would you say at the moment is the best you've seen? Because obviously under Brendan Rodgers, Celtic had that massive unbeaten run, 69 games unbeaten. They won the treble. They were just a fantastic side. So far, what have you made of Ange Postecoglou's team at the moment? And do you think there are levels between those two teams?
I think a comparison could be drawn, and I do understand why, because these two Celtic sides have been exceptional. If Celtic were to win the treble this season, then in terms of quality between the players of both both eras, I would probably say Ange's reign maybe just becomes better. And that's also down to the fact when Brendan Rodgers was manager, Rangers wasn't as good as what they are now. So if we were to get a treble against a really good Rangers side, you've got to say, then I would probably say maybe the Ange Postecoglou kind of side does edge it. Obviously, even when you look at players like Jota, I think he's the best technical player Celtic have had in years. Just when he's on the ball, his skills, etc. But as I say, I do get why the comparison has been drawn. However, speaking right now, it's definitely Brendan Rodgers' side. As of right now, it's currently, I would say, just edges it. However, that could change if we were to win a treble.
Lewis, do you see comparisons between the Brendan Rodgers side and the Ange Postecoglou side? Because obviously under Brendan Rodgers, they had a fantastic side. You're looking at guys like Dembele, like Odsonne Edouard. Celtic, I'm not saying you can compare Kyogo and that to those players because they're completely different players. But do you see a comparison between those kind of Brendan Rodgers side and an Ange Postecoglou side?
It's a tough one to say, really, Graham. We're still quite relatively early into Postecoglou's reign. I think the most exciting thing that he's brought to Scottish football is the style of play. Celtic play at an incredibly quick pace. They're a great team to watch, and obviously the type of signing he's brought in, he's led this mini Japanese revolution at the moment, or Asian revolution, I should say, with Obin from South Korea. I think from that perspective, from a fan's perspective, I'm sure that it probably comes across as quite an exciting thing for them. The players that they're signing there, they aren't specifically guys they know a great deal about. So there's that kind of fear of the unknown, whereas you think of guys like Odsonne Edouard, who came from PSG. He'd scored a good number of goals at under 21 level. Moussa Dembele was kind of a good reputation already in Europe, so the fans kind of knew a bit more about some of these players that before they came to Celtic, whereas the guys at Postecoglou has his eye on are relative unknown quantities, and the fact they've come into Scottish football and adapted as quickly as they have has been really impressive to see. They've instantly taken to the type of football he wants to put on display, and even it's hard to compare based on the amount of trophies. Of course, Brendan Rodgers won the invincible side that he had. Some top class players like Tom Rogic, a fantastic player he turned out to be for Celtic. The list is endless from that side. So in terms of comparisons, it is hard to compare based on the caliber of player. I'd say they're fairly similar at the moment, but certainly the brand of football that Celtic are currently playing has never been seen before in Scottish football.
Dave, one of our regular contributors, Aslino, so good they named him twice, has said, surprised Rangers kept Morelos for so long. I've always thought he's a liability and a weak point of the team, easy to rile, etc. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I've had that opinion for a while, but I think the reason why Rangers have kept the hold of Morelos for as long as they have is because they quite simply haven't strengthened in the forward area. I mean, they've had Joe Watson this season, and to an extent, it's provided a bit of competition. Last season, they had Fashion Sakala and Kemar Roof, but when you look at Roof and Sakala, they're not exactly number nines or recognised number nines. They're not. They're not the. What's the right way to put it? They're not a overall package when it comes to the normal number nine striker that we come accustomed to. They're they're probably both number tens in terms of the way they play. So Morelos is probably still at the club because Rangers don't find or didn't have a suitable number nine prior to Cholak coming in this term. And I think that's one of the reasons why Morelos has still been at the club as long as he has. Yes, his disciplinary records came into it a little bit. In all fairness to Gerrard, in his first season at Ibrox, Gerrard, for large proximity, Morelos, I'm wrong here, just sent off Petordre. Was it Petordre got sent off? And Gerrard was like, no, that's it as far as I'm concerned. And after that, Morelos did kind of tidy up on the disciplinary front. There was still two minor issues, but nowhere near to the extent it was during his first season. Probably because there's been that sense of improvement on the disciplinary front has been a reason. But also, what I would say from my perspective is I don't think Morelos he's obviously scored a lot of big goals for Rangers, but his track record and his goal scoring ratio against Celtic leaves a lot to be desired as far as Morelos is concerned. And I can understand why the question's been asked to an extent.
Oren, we know as football fans that when you sign players, it can go wrong. There's a lot of tendency that managers are judged on their results, which is true, but they're also judged on players that they sign. You could sign 20 players and 5 or 6 can be really bad, can be really poor. Postecoglou's record at signing players so far for Celtic has so far been very impressive. He's not got a lot wrong so far.
Yeah, no. When you look at the additions of Kyogo, Maeda, even Hatate, who just already played a full season in the J-League and then came over, and then I think on his debut, I think it was, he scored against Hearts. Then obviously a few
Don't remind me. I'm a Hearts fan. Don't remind me.
Apologies. And then a few weeks later, he scored 2 against Rangers. So yeah, the additions he's brought in, they've been very impressed. But then obviously on the flip side, there has been some kind of signings which hasn't quite paid off. 2 that springs to mind is Ideguchi and James McCarthy, who there's some kind of talk between, was that Ange Postecoglou's signing, or is that, kind of a Celtic board signing? But as I say, the signings that has been good, that mightily outweighs the signings which hasn't quite paid off quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, Lewis, Oren mentioned a player there that I, even as a Hearts fan, I like seeing quality. And people will say, you're a Hearts fan, how can you look at quality? But I do see it occasionally. But I'm looking at Rio Hatate, and for me, now when he first came to Celtic, Ange Postecoglou did say that he wasn't quite fit enough yet, and when he gets to full fitness, he will be a very good player. I think this season so far, he's been the standout player in the league. I think he's been absolutely fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, you can see since he came in the door, his performance level is just kind of vastly improved. You saw it in his first couple of matches. I think I'm right in thinking he made his debut at Tynecastle in that game.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and he put so much into it. I think he was just spent force by about the hour mark, and that was a kind of recurring theme. I think he actually did an interview at the end of the season talking about how obviously he'd just come off the back of the J-League season, and he was running on empty towards the end of the campaign, I think a bit of a break over the summer did him really good in terms of recharging his batteries, because he returned and straight from the outset has been as he quite rightly said, he's been one of Celtic's standout performers this season. I touched on it earlier, his performance against Aberdeen last weekend, some of his touches and movement, and he's just a joy to watch on his day. And he still doesn't quite seem to last a full 90 minutes. That's something that you'll need to continue to kind of to work away at. But there's undoubtedly a fantastic player Ange Postecoglou's got there, and then once again it just kind of reaffirms his eye for a player. He knows that Asian market incredibly well, and as he said, barring Ideguchi, he's got every signing so far spot on. O's come in. I like the look of him. He's quite a physical presence. He gives them something different as well. So yeah, but in terms of Hatate, I mean, I think nowadays he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet at the moment.
Dave, in terms of Michael Beale, obviously Celtic are looking to retain the League Cup that they won last season. Michael Beale looking to try and win his first trophy. In terms of Rangers and Michael Beale, where can Rangers win this game? Is it going to be winning that midfield battle?
No, I don't agree with that. I think it's defensively, because if you look at how the Rangers have performed against Celtic this season, now there's a massive improvement in January. Now midfield will be pivotal on Sunday. I'll thoroughly acknowledge that, Graham, but I know that it's a completely different management tenure, but when Rangers played Celtic in September, Rangers were just carved open all over the place defensively, and Celtic justifiably so won 4-0 because they were carving Rangers open all day long and they were simply ruthless, and Rangers just simply no answers. Now it's a different Rangers team now, but I think when you look at Rangers right this time, they've obviously got a lot more forward thinking impetus about the Kamara, and who else was it? Was it Jack, perhaps? I might be horribly wrong in that part, but the defensive midfield players were bombing forward and making a huge impact. Tavernier had the best Old Firm performance I've seen him play in a long time in that game in January. So from that game, even although Rangers didn't win the game, there was a lot of positives for Michael Beale. Now it's about pulling that forward into Sunday. I was asked yesterday by a few friends, because I'm on a group chat, and we were asked about who could make a difference for Rangers on Sunday. For me, I think defensively it could be a big performance for Rangers. I think Conor Goals is a big performance. Ben Davies will be interested to see how he gets on if he performs beside Goldson, because for Ben Davies, he's not an accomplished centre half. He's more a left back. So I'll be interested to see how he gets on. If Ryan Jack doesn't pass a fitness test or whatever have you, we'll just see how Raskin gets on, because it'll be a big occasion for Raskin. It'll be something he's not really experienced with, so we'll just see how he gets on. Todd Cantwell the same. He could be in that same category considering new signing and all that kind of stuff. As Lewis said, I think Kent will play. I think Tillman will play, and then Morelos. I think Morelos needs a big game from him as well. So Rangers are improving all the time under Michael Beale game. And I think they need big performances in the forward areas, but most importantly, I think they need a big performance defensively.
Oren, talking about defensively, Celtic, that back four, Johnson, Carter-Vickers, Starfelt, Taylor, it's a very strong Celtic defence. And again, a bit like Hatate when he first came in, I didn't think Starfelt started particularly well at Celtic, but again, he's just got better and better alongside Carter-Vickers, who again, for me, has been a standout for Celtic.
Exactly, yeah, and the back line, it pretty much just picks for itself. At the start of last season, there was definitely questions asked to whether if the defence improved. I think a highlight of that was Starfelt's performance against Hearts at Tynecastle, first game of last season.
It was great. I loved it. Loved every second of
it. But in contrast to that, now just the performances, it's been so strong and so mature, and the back line, it's pretty young. You've got Alistair Johnston, who isn't old at all. Likewise with Carter Vickers and Greg Taylor. And when Juranovic left last month, although we did already bring in Alistair Johnson, I did think maybe perhaps that would kind of almost unsettle the back line, but I've been proved totally wrong with great defensive performances over and over again. But as you said, Carter Vickers, he's been instrumental last season and so far this season as well. He's an absolutely great defender.
Lewis, in terms of Michael Beale, he's obviously unbeaten so far since he came in. They have probably, for me, their two best performances for me were Livingston last week and Hearts at Tynecastle, where they ripped Hearts apart. What are, obviously I'm not in and around Glasgow, what are Rangers fans' thoughts on Michael Beale? Is he the popular appointment? Are they happy with what he's done so far? And, you know, is this game on Sunday, as David mentioned already, it's a huge, huge game, but does this matter more for Michael Beale?
I think they've been satisfied with his start. I know it sounds strange, the fact he's won he's won 13 out of his 14 games in charge, and albeit that draw in the Old Firm derby back in January at Ibrox is a game they probably should have won. It's weird saying that they'd be satisfied with that. However, the performance levels, again, you know, something I touched on earlier this week was that Celtic have been blowing teams away. You know, their command and score lines, they're really kind of putting teams to the sword, whereas Rangers kind of be seeming to limp across the finish line for a couple of weeks there. You know, a couple of key moments could have gone either way, could have, you know, been a slightly different outcome. You know, so in terms of the performance level, I think Rangers have another level to go up to, and I'm kind of really excited to see how things kind of change over the summer at Ibrox. Obviously, Michael Beale's been quite open about how he would have liked more players in. He doesn't want short-term fixes. He wants long-term additions, and it's clear that there'll be an overhaul of players this season. He's got a lot of big decisions to make. And in terms of this weekend, you know, I personally do think it is a bigger game for him, just purely on the basis that if he can get one over Ange Postecoglou early doors and win the first trophy of the season, that's a huge marker to lay down for the remainder of the campaign, should they obviously meet in potentially the Scottish Cup as well. You know, I think it's important to note that, you know, as much as he's had a great start to his Ibrox tenure, it'll count for very little if Rangers finish the season without a trophy, and, you know, having lost a couple of the big fight, you know, cup matches along the way. You know, it's going to be a hugely difficult task to catch Celtic in the title race, but this weekend's a massive opportunity for Beale to lay down a marker. And I think what's from an outsider's perspective looking in, what is rather kind of interesting is you look at aside from his Rangers record so far, where he's yet to lose a game, if you look at his record when he was at QPR and the results they've had since he's left, QPR plummeted down the championship table. So that's really interesting, and I think he's still kind of in the process of trying to put his own stamp on this team. Obviously, he's spoken about wanting to get key players back from injury. He's still got, you know, the likes of Tom Lawrence and John Souttar to come back into the fray. So I'm excited to see how Rangers could fare during the latter stages of this season and into next season.
We had Paul Mitchell on earlier on, and I was trying to kind of have a laugh about it as well, but I was kind of in my head thinking, right, is this going to be the case or not? So I'm going to come to Lewis on this first. So against Partick Thistle, we all watched the game, and against Partick Thistle, the Rangers fans were furious when Michael Beale allowed Partick Thistle to go through and score after what happened with the whole Malik Tillman thing. So you can only take people at face value, and I took Michael Beale at face value. If that happens in this scenario against Celtic, is he doing the same thing? Because I'm telling you now, those Rangers fans would be raging if he did that against Celtic.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you've raised there, Graham. You know, he's a man of class, supposedly. You know, he's known for his sporting integrity. Michael Beale, like that's kind of the way he wants to be presented. But this is a totally different kettle of fish. When it comes to a cup final, depending on the timing. If a situation like that were to arise again, it's a real head scratcher. It's a really difficult one to call, whether or not he would do it. As he said, the decision clearly frustrated a lot of fans, albeit they eventually did manage to get over the line against Partick Thistle in the previous round, but the cup. But it's a difficult one to call, because that's the first time we've ever seen a situation like that kind of crop up in a match in Scotland, certainly from what I can remember anyway. So whether or not that would happen against Celtic, I'm not so sure, in all honesty. A game of this magnitude, I wouldn't be so sure that he'd do the same thing this time around.
Oren, I guess if the shoe was on their foot and this was Celtic, you wouldn't be happy if that happened to you, would you?
Absolutely. I think the whole situation, it was very kind of bizarre, and I think it was a misunderstanding. I don't think Tillman went and knew exactly what he was doing, but I think Beale, would he do it to us? I think he would, just due to the fact that he said, sporting integrity, he thinks it was right, and I think to contradict himself after a matter of weeks, I think he would give us the goal if that did happen. Obviously, it's highly unlikely, but I do think he would do it. But hopefully that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
Before I get your thoughts on the final itself and what you think the score is going to be, I just want to very quickly as well, because we've got 5 minutes left. Dave, I'll start with you first. VAR, we all talk about it. We know it's coming into play on Sunday. We all want a really good game of football, and I think the one thing we're hoping for is that this game is not decided on a VAR decision.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm interested to see what happens. Here's hoping the game can be played via VAR free, but I do think there will be something. But I think a respective game will be a fantastic game between two fantastic sides.
Yeah, Lewis, I haven't been a massive advocate of VAR this season. I think there's been a lot of very poor decisions. Again, I've said this as well on the show before, that for me, the technology is not the issue. It's the folk in that little room that use it. And again, as an outsider looking in, I'm hoping for a really good game of football, and I'm hoping at the end of the game, we're talking about a fantastic game and not what's going on in the VAR room and in the middle of the park.
Yeah, well, in the modern day at the moment, the referees seem to have lost all confidence in their decision making. It's been such a widely well documented kind of issue since it came in. A lot of managers saying they're for it in the long run. It'll pan out well, but that's been a number of months now, and we don't seem to be kind of any much further progress made in that period of time. I think obviously what happened at the World Cup had a lot to do with the way kind of has impacted match officials' decision making. And when it comes to Celtic and Rangers matches, unfortunately they never seem to pass without incident. And in my view, I think it's inevitable that at some stage this weekend it will crop up, unfortunately. Let's just hope it doesn't have a huge kind of defining outcome on the end result, because as he says, that's not what anyone wants to see.
Oren, I guess you won't care about works in Celtic's favour.
Oh, no, absolutely. Especially a game like this, cup final. But just to add to the point Lewis made, the one thing that really annoys me about VAR, it's the delays. Now, I don't think every single delay, I don't think it's necessary. You're taking 4 or 5 minutes to check a goal. One that springs to mind is Morton versus Celtic last month. And for the record, I don't think that was a penalty at all. And it took, 4 5 minutes to check it, and then the referee went to the monitor. It's just things like that. It does really frustrate me because it breaks up the game. Obviously, the technology we've got it, but seemingly it's the people in the VR rooms that are doing these delays. So it is very frustrating. Hopefully, it doesn't play a part on Sunday. However, as I said, just as long as we win, I don't mind.
Right, Oren, score prediction, Celtic Rangers.
Close game, extra time, 2-1 Celtic.
Lewis, score prediction.
I'm going for a thrilling 2-2 draw after 90 minutes, and I'm going for Celtic to edge it in extra time 3-2. I think this match will be won for me in the wide areas.
Dave, score prediction.
That's very intelligent there, Lewis. 1 apiece after 90 minutes, and then Celtic to win 2-1 after extra time. No, 3-1. We'll go for 3-1 after extra time.
And I'm going to go 2-1 Celtic normal time, because if it runs on, then our show on Sunday is going to be horrendous because we're starting at 5 o'clock. But just for me to thank very much to Dave, thank you to Lewis, and thank you again to Oren for coming on. You were both absolutely fantastic. Hope you'll come on again in the future. You were great guests. We are back on Sunday at 5 o'clock for the after-match reaction. I hope you join us then. We're back next Friday as well, the usual time of 5 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for your comments, and we shall see you again on Sunday. Bye-bye.